This is Dimitri Lascaris, reporting from Toronto, Canada. I'm joined today once again by Rehab Nazzal, a Palestinian-Canadian artist and educator who is currently in the occupied West Bank and specifically in Bethlehem. Thank you very much, Rehab, for joining me again.
Thank you for having me, Dimitri.
So, Rehab, the last time that we spoke, you were also in Bethlehem. I believe it was about 4 weeks ago. We were some 2 weeks or so into this terrible, horrifying war that Israel is waging against Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. And I'd like you to start by just sort of explaining to us in broad terms, based upon your own, interactions with your fellow Palestinians living under occupation and what you've seen with your own eyes, heard with your own ears, what has happened in the West Bank, particularly in Bethlehem, since we last spoke?
What's happening is a war in the West Bank. Although all the eyes are still focusing on Gaza, in the West Bank, the situation is escalating by the day. I've never seen such violence by settlers and by the occupation forces. Every single night there are raids, and now actually during the day, they raid cities and refugee camps and villages. They impose curfew, which, I mean, I just lived this at the beginning of the Israeli occupation, the curfew. They shut down entirely the entrances and exits of villages and towns. And it was, I would say, the olive harvest season. People couldn't reach their olives, many areas. Settlers are vicious. They're armed by the war cabinet, as you know, the settlers cabinet, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. The arrest every single night. There is over 3,000 Palestinians who are arrested, and we can't count. Like the last 24 hours, over 30 were arrested here in Bethlehem. Imagine invading the city last night, and they wanted specific people, like for posting on social media or for being previously prisoners. They attack their homes. If they don't find them, they arrest their families, and in order to pressure them to hand themselves in. And I've seen people just handing themselves in to the Israelis. The way they invade the towns and villages, like I was in Jenin with my sister, and I've witnessed from 1:30 a.m. until 7 a.m. bulldozers, they're carving the streets. Like why? They're carving the streets, they're destroying public monuments, just regular public monuments. It's like they're killing anything beautiful in that city, destroying the infrastructure, and using assassination drones. This is something that I was really shocked to see in Jenin, assassination drones being used. I mean, I can go on and on. But
could you describe what it took for you, just practically speaking? How did you get into Jenin?
Yeah, that is a good question, because since the end of September, I just managed to go one time to Jenin, and it was risky, but I wanted to see my family. I want to see my sisters and brothers. So I went like through many checkpoints. I was checked. It was with a public service. It's sharing rides. Only another person who also risked it from Bethlehem. We went, and for over a week, I couldn't find a way to get back to Bethlehem, but then I managed with the same driver. it was difficult. Like, you don't know what to expect at the checkpoints. The driver was telling me, like, we can wait 2 hours, 3 hours. We don't know if they close the container, which leads to Bethlehem. We couldn't take the road through Ramallah because settlers there are vicious and they attack cars. So we took a different road through Jericho. It's crazy.
How long ultimately did it take for you to get from Bethlehem to Jenin on that day?
You see, people don't go, so the streets are empty. It's not that it's congested. So it took about 3.5 hours.
And how many kilometers away is Jenin? The shortest drive, let's say?
I think about 80
kilometers.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned, cases of people being arrested, Palestinians, for social media activity. I've also seen a number of reports to that effect. Do you yourself, we're doing this interview, and we did one previously. You obviously, and I know that you've been active on social media, you've obviously, your views you're expressing your views quite affirmatively. And are you concerned about the Israeli authorities? You've already been shot by an Israeli sniper. Are you concerned about them taking retribution against you, arresting you, or worse? And I'm curious to know, why do you think they haven't done that yet? Might it be the fact that you have Canadian citizenship and so they're showing some restraint with respect to you? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, they don't give a damn to a Canadian citizenship or American or anything, to be honest. It's me. I don't have any concern. Let them do whatever they want. I rather live with dignity, honestly. I don't care. I would continue to write and contribute my thoughts, my beliefs. No, I'm not afraid. I'm not.
I saw a report switching to a different subject about what's going on. It wasn't a report. It was representatives of Hamas calling on the security forces of the Palestinian Authority to join with the resistance and to stop being a tool of oppressing the occupied Palestinian population in the West Bank. Are you aware of any suggestion or indication that some proportion of the Palestinian Authority security forces have defected to the resistance, or are they continuing as a security force to do the job that they've essentially been doing, throughout the occupation?
I can't answer really like a comprehensive answer, but from several examples, one in Ramallah, where security forces arrested some protesters, that was outrageous, including among members of the PA. And I'm talking about the lower level. There is a great deal of discomfort, a great deal of solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. There is tension among those members. So you can distinguish between the upper echelon of a few subcontractors with the occupation and the majority of the people who are ordinary, like they are neighbors and relatives. And of course, what's happening is affecting them greatly. We don't know really where things are going. All I can tell you that the Palestinian Authority is done in the hearts and minds and thoughts of the Palestinian people. It's done. Their silence, their complicity, is just beyond imagination.
And today, of course, we learned that there is at least a temporary truce. It appears that it's going to be in effect for 4 to 5 days. The Israelis have committed to releasing 150 Palestinian women held as hostages in the Israeli prison system. Hamas has, and the other the resistance groups in Gaza who have hostages have committed to release, I think, some 50 of them, 10 per day. Humanitarian aid is supposed to come in much greater quantities during this period to Gaza. There's supposed to be restrictions on the ability of the Israeli military to operate in the north of Gaza. What do you make of, I mean, you know, we all heard for weeks from Netanyahu that there would be no cessation in the hostilities and the destruction and the barbarism unless and until all of the hostages held by the resistance groups in Gaza were released. And yet he's now not only agreed to cease hostilities for less than all of the hostages, the majority are going to continue to be held by the resistance groups, but he's even releasing hostages on his side in greater number than those being released by the resistance groups in Gaza. So what do you make of all of this? What do you think it indicates about the state of the Israeli government's efforts to destroy Hamas and, you know, bring an end to resistance in Gaza once and for all?
What I make of it, that any colonized and occupied people have the right to resist. And the resistance movement, the resistance language is the only language that the occupying power understands. That is the only thing that's going to change this status quo that the occupation imposed. They destroyed Gaza, North Gaza, 60,000 homes. They displaced 1.5 million. They killed 11,000. The children, the images of children haunts us every single night. Parents crying, mothers. And this is a call for feminists. It is a feminist issue as well in Gaza. All this, in order to destroy Hamas, they could not. They could not kill the leaders. They could not reach the resistance headquarters. They did not free any of the hostages. And now they are forced to, of course, negotiate, and they accepted this deal. But on the other hand, when we look at it, there are over 7,600 Palestinian prisoners, kidnapped, basically. 3,000 of them were kidnapped the last few weeks only. So Israel can release 50, but the next night can also arrest 100. So it's for the negotiation, or for those who negotiate such a deal, to really put restrictions on Israel, just to practice their power by every night arresting women and children and men. But at the very end, yes, freedom doesn't come through negotiation. For 30 years, the Palestinian Authority negotiated with Israel, and what we got, we lost 60% of the West Bank. They turned the West Bank into Gazas. There are 5 Gazas, 6 Gazas within the West Bank. Cantons, ghettos of Bethlehem, Hebron, Ramallah, etc. So that's the only language they understand. And we are changing, the Palestinians, changing this reality by asserting our right of resistance, our right of self-defense. And it's so disgusting. I don't want to use the term, but to watch the media, the Western media, speaking about the kidnapped, but not mentioning the Palestinians who are kidnapped in the thousands, speaking about Israel's right to self-defense, while it's an occupying power. It's a colonizing power. It has no right to practice against the colonized and occupied. So, or see, for example, Canada. Canada being complicit in the genocide, complicit. Like, I could not comprehend any representative of a state in the United Nations not to support a ceasefire, not to support the end of killing children, babies, schools, bombing schools, destroying hospitals. I could not comprehend. That makes them, every country that is against ending the situation is complicit in it. And it's just not the ceasefire. It's ending the siege. It's ending the occupation. It's not just here. It's enough. 75 years is enough. My parents, myself, and my children, it's enough.
I want to offer you a perspective from somebody who's, as you know, I've devoted considerable time and energy to understanding the plight of the Palestinian people. And sitting here in the West, on the outside looking in, I formed a view, which I've articulated several times, including in a couple of interviews this morning, that I want to share with you and get your reaction to it as a Palestinian living under occupation, experiencing these horrors on a daily basis. And my view is that what we have seen over the last 7 weeks has fundamentally and irrevocably altered the reality of the Palestinian struggle. As horrific as it has been for the Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza, Israel has shown such a lack of restraint, has crossed so many red lines, has revealed to such a degree its absolute contempt for Palestinian life, its genocidal objectives, its desire to control definitively and permanently the whole of historic Palestine, and then some, including the Golan Heights. The reality has become so obvious, and it's such a horrible reality, that my own view is that we are very unlikely to return to the status quo, and that Israel is hurtling towards what I describe as strategic defeat. In other words, its ultimate objective will be of controlling the whole of historic Palestine and either ethnically cleansing it of Palestinians or subjecting them to a permanent state of apartheid will be defeated, and that they're going to have to make some kind of an accommodation, whether it's a one-state solution or a two-state solution, and that this is going to come about through a variety of pressure points being applied on Israel. There will be the political and diplomatic pressure points of isolation, the military defeat, or at least the inability of the Israeli military to achieve its stated objectives, and the economic damage to the country. So that's my view, and I want to be very clear that this is not, certainly, I don't view it as an expression of optimism. This is just a cold, hard, on my part, geopolitical analysis of the situation, which may or may not be correct at the end of the day, but it's just one person's view looking at, as I say, on the outside looking in. What's your view? What do you think is likely to emerge from this current horror show that Israel is inflicting on Palestinian people?
Well, first of all, it exposed what's called Western democracy, Western human rights. It is exposed not for us, the Palestinians, but for the Western public. Like, imagine imposing, for example, on Iran sanction when a woman was killed. A woman. The whole country was outraged. And you're talking about 11,000, 12,000, destruction, a genocide, and nothing being taken. It's the public, the Western public. There is a divide. It's never been clear between the public and the public support to the Palestinian people and the Western governments that are shielding Israel, supporting Israel, providing Israel with arms. All that can be done is just implementing the international law. How many resolutions Israel defied? Just pressuring Israel. We know, that the US and other Western countries are part of the whole settler colonial project in Palestine. And there are some eyes on the Gaza, in the coast of Gaza as well. It's not really removed from what's happening, this issue. But we learn from history. And we look at our comrades in South Africa and their experience. It started with the public support. It started with the inside resistance, all forms of resistance, and the public globally supporting South Africans. And that's when the collapse began. And I see it happening. I see great support across the globe to the Palestinians. The BDS is as active as never before. People are questioning what they're eating, what they're consuming, how they're contributing in their homes, in their daily lives to the oppression of the Palestinians. So there are changes coming. And within the Israeli society, this is the last thing I will talk about it, because it's really like showed us that fascism is the word to describe the society in there. Although there are now some voices that just focused on Israeli kidnapped, not Palestinian kidnapped. So there's no equality even in the value of lives for the Israeli citizens. The Jewish community is doing great work. We are watching and we appreciate this, and we defy Netanyahu and his cabinet and other Zionists in Canada or other countries of turning this situation into religious war. We are together, independent Jewish voices, Jewish Voice for Peace, every human being who value humanity. We stand together against this settler colonial occupation apartheid system.
And the last thing I want to talk about, you touched on it a moment ago. You know, in our country and other Western countries, there is a segment of the progressive / left which is prepared to, and I'm here talking about the political elite. I'm not talking about ordinary people, because there's a huge distinction. You can see it on the streets, you can see it in the polls. There's a huge distinction about what people feel about this crisis and this injustice, and what the governments of the West are actually doing about it, or failing to do about it. So I'm talking here about the political elite in the West. There's a segment within the political elite in the West that tries to, is willing to be critical of the Israeli government, even perhaps harshly critical, but they tried to make it sound like this is a problem of Netanyahu. This is all about Benjamin Netanyahu. And if only we could get rid of that terrible man, you know, the world will be rosy, and we'll all be headed on a path of peace and justice in Palestine and Israel. I'd like you to talk to us a little bit, just to close it out, about the reality of Israeli politics. You know, who are these other characters on the mainstream political stage, like Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz and you know, so forth? Are these people any different from Netanyahu at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, there is no difference. Just some of them expose their message clearly and practices, others don't. And that's the history of the state, the building of the state of Israel since the Nakba, and then since 1967 occupation and throughout the Oslo process. There is no difference. The major aspect in all this situation is the colonies, the settlement colonies in the West Bank. They flourish on the time of each of these parties. Really, there is no difference. Maybe the difference is that they get more arms now with the settlers' cabinet ministers, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are living illegally in settlements. So no, we don't see any difference. We have not seen, like, from breaking bones during the Intifada, the first Intifada, into the assassination, into the house demolishing, into just invading every single night, just trying to break any resistance anywhere in the West Bank. It's a policy. It's a policy, and really, you go back to the settler colonial project. They want the whole land. They don't want any Palestinians on it. Expulsion since Kahana, who's Ben Gvir, I guess, he's his student. They don't want Palestinians. However, Palestinians are not going anywhere. And if you look at even the demography, Palestinians, I think, now exceeded the population of the Jewish Israelis. So they're not going anywhere. They're resilient. Even in northern Gaza, death reigning 24 hours, and people are talking about not leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's been a pleasure as always talking with you, Rehab, about this terrible situation. I'm sorry that I look forward to a day when we can talk about things other than the suffering being inflicted upon the Palestinian people, and I truly believe that day is coming within our lifetimes. And so I look forward to our next conversation, and please do stay safe.
thank you. Thank you very much.